Hello everyone, this is my needs assessment proposal. The purpose of this needs assessment is to identify what resources are present and what resources are absent for victims of domestic violence. I did my needs assessment at a safe house where victims of domestic violence can stay at. The safe house offers shelter to men, women, and children when they have left an abusive situation or relationship. The presenting problem for the safe house is that there is not enough resources to help all of their clients. One of the problems that the safe house faces is that a client can only stay at the facility for 30 days. Their stay can be extended under special circumstances, but it must be approved by the program coordinator. So if the program coordinator approves it, the person can stay for a longer amount of time, but if it's not approved, they have to exit after those 30 days. A client is accepted into the safe house through a screening process, which is done over the phone through a series of questions that are asked, and the program itself is explained to the client during the screening process. So when the program is explained, the screener states that the client is responsible for finding stable housing and that their case manager will help them by offering resources. This means that the client can leave the safe house after 30 days and have nowhere to go. And if the client has nowhere to go, they're more likely to return back to their abuser. But the case manager will offer them resources and applications to other housing facilities and other apartments and things like that. But the client is responsible for applying and reaching out themselves and securing the housing for themselves. The data was collected at a safe house in New Jersey that works to help victims of domestic violence. I can't give the address or anything like that because of confidentiality. I actually had to sign a confidentiality agreement when I went to go and do my interviews. But the program that the shelter is associated with also offers counseling and legal help besides just shelter at the safe house. I interviewed 2 people who work at the safe house. This was because shelter is a main problem for people who experience domestic violence because they usually have nowhere else to go. I interviewed a case manager who works directly with the clients and an employee who is called a substitute, which is someone who fills in as a case manager, child advocate, and the resident assistant. My interviews consisted of about 10 questions, which asked about domestic violence in general, strengths and weaknesses of the population, and how their program could be improved. When I asked what some of the barriers were that victims of domestic violence face, the answers I got were re-victimization and lack of resources. Unfortunately, the Safe House program is only designed for a 30-day stay, like I said previously, so it's extremely difficult for the survivor to obtain stable living in that short amount of time. The interviews showed that the strengths of the population is resiliency. They are able to continue moving forward after leaving an abusive relationship and moving on with their lives. However, a weakness is that some people will return back to their abuser. One of the people I interviewed actually stated that on average, a victim must leave their abuser 7 times before they actually leave the abuser for good and don't return. When I asked why domestic violence occurs, one of the answers I got back was a lack of education. There's a stigma around domestic violence and people are very uneducated about it. One of the good things about the program at the Safe House is that during someone's stay, they teach them about the cycle of violence and the power and control wheel. One of my recommendations is for a client stay at the Safe House to be longer. 30 days is not enough time to obtain a stable living situation, and there are many people who want to better their situations but are not able to do so in that allotted amount of time. And when they are given resources to go to other places, they usually have to do a screening, which could take time, or the place may have to wait until they have space available to accept the client, and that also takes time and could take more than 30 days. It's also important to consider that many victims of domestic violence do not have jobs. This is usually because the abuser will not let them work, and this is because the abuser wanted to be the sole breadwinner of the household and be in control. And since the survivor does not have a job, it is harder for them to get housing or get approved for it. They should also offer more resources and housing options for each client that stays in the safe house. The resources that are offered to each client are usually only located in the county that the safe house is in, and I think they should be able to look out of county as well. They do mention that they look out of county, but it is a bigger deal for them to look out of county because they don't have as many connections there. I'm going to send over my findings to the site through email. It took me a while to schedule my interviews because the workers in the safe house are very busy. They're constantly helping clients, meeting with them, running groups for them, and the case managers are constantly busy finding resources, reaching out to other agencies, things like that. I also took into consideration that not all of the employees are there at the same time. By emailing my presentation and findings, this allows the email to be forwarded and shared with all the staff members. And for my self-reflection, I had a positive experience. Some of the key factors that made my needs assessment successful were that people at the agency were very easy to get in contact with. I literally reached out through phone and email, and everybody got back to me on the same day that I called or emailed them at. They were very honest when answering my interview questions. Some of my questions were a bit challenging to answer, but other answers came with ease. Something that hindered my assessment was that during my interviews, sometimes they stated that the program was doing enough for their clients, and other times they stated that it was not. So this was a bit confusing for me, and this caused me to either reword or rephrase my questions to them. So like I said before, the experience was a positive one for me. I learned a lot from conducting these interviews. I didn't know much about safe houses before completing this project, and now I understand how they work. I also know more about domestic violence. So when people think of domestic violence, their brain automatically goes straight to physical violence. I was one of these people. However, after completing my interviews, I understand that this can also be verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and financial abuse, not just physical. I learned how a safe house functions and what it offers to its clients, and also how a safe house would not be able to function without the resources around it. The resources around it allow victims of domestic violence to receive help, and this can be through counseling and other services.